Okay. I'm going to call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. The purpose of tonight's meeting is informational for the purpose in terms of providing information on reactions and assessments of various stakeholders and city departments to the flood that happened 2.5 weeks ago. With that said, I just want to thank everybody in this room for your efforts on behalf of the city of Spencer, the residents of Spencer. We are making, I think, amazing progress. And as I've said, we're moving forward together. We made progress yesterday. We're going to make progress today. And I think that's been kind of the goal that we have set for ourselves as we move into this recovery phase and as we move further into the rebuilding phase of this. But this is just to basically assess and see where everybody's efforts are in a collective. So we're going to start out. If you've got an agenda, I'm messing with the agenda a little bit here, but we're going to start out with a report from Interim Deputy City Manager Kevin Robinson, who was tasked with kind of managing the city's response to the flood recovery and rebuild. So, Kevin?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a brief high-level recap of what the city's response to this disaster has been, and I'll do it in phases. So the first phase, obviously, Saturday morning was rescue, safety, and shelter, so the immediate needs of the citizens. During that response, a lot of people helped out with rescues, citizen rescues. From a city perspective, what happened was our resources were immediately cut in half as the river went over the bridge. We lost communications, our 911 system, very early as well. But as the day progressed, the response was amazing. There were Sharif, was there 3 or 4 shelters set up across the area? Yeah, where's she at? 4. So you have a lot of very busy activity that's not real organized during this phase of the disaster. The next phase we moved into was the assessment of impacted resources. So is our water on? Is our electric on? Is our water plant, treatment plant alive? Can we get across town? Are the east and west bypasses available? So the coordination of a headquarters team was put together and state resources were deployed up here. One of the first priorities was to get the 911 system and communications between fire and police back up and running. There was a lot of state support with that, and of course with our EMS director, Eric Tigas, his role is key. So not only is his role to tabletop and plan and prepare and things of that nature, but when an event actually happens, he becomes our key resource to coordinate state and federal requests to come in for assistance. The next phase was engagement of support structures, primarily initially for residents. So we need to make sure that there's food, shelter, and safety. So those initial structures that were put together were then more formally organized. State resources and federal resources, as well as a lot of local effort, was put into supply chain, distribution area was set up, and but a lot of this stuff is organically happening in the community just based on need. So as the word spreads of the disaster, there's people who do food for disasters that are mobilized. There's a lot of community organization that occurs. And then we start to assess our own operation as a city. What are we able to bring back on? What are we not able to bring back on? Or how are the employees impacted? The next phase we moved into was the coordination of return to functional city operation, I guess you could say. So by this time now, the utilities have been assessed, what can be on, what can be off. The Black Hills Energy, and you'll hear all their detailed reports, rapid assessments of home structures, what type of scope of event are we in, what might be safe or not safe to go into for residents, and then the escalation of a plan to remove damaged personal property from homes as well as from the business sector. So those plans were put together and carried out, and what we are in today is what I would consider the beginning of long-term recovery planning. So the pace of the decision-making in the immediacy of the disaster has slowed down. We're now able to breathe a little bit and be more strategic about things. We're able to get a little more clarity from the organizations that you're going to hear from about what they can and can't do for individuals as well as for our public assistance programs. We're analyzing staffing resources. So in the crowd, I think she's here, yeah. So Sandy Fowler is here. She reached out to Dan after this disaster happened, and when I connected with Dan, he had mentioned contact Sandy. So Sandy led the recovery as deputy city manager. She's now retired, although hopefully still active, in the work of helping us to figure out, hey, here's where I think your resources are at from a staffing perspective. Here's what I think you're probably going to need. Every town I've talked to that's gone through this, there's an influx of workflow that comes into especially the planning department area with requests and rebuilding and zoning and structures and houses that need significant improvements made to them. So that is the part we are in now. I know there's two common topics that were somewhat confusing during all of this from a decision-making standpoint. So one would be the Spencer Aquatic Center. I can touch on that for you. And then the other is getting a person in here on staff to assist, at least in the short term, with financial help and assessment for us. So I'll touch on the pool first. So the pool is a vital resource to the community. A lot of people use it. It's a very critical part of summer activity. The decision was made at the end of June, so this is the week before July 4th, of course, after the disaster. We can get to that south end to assess. Park Director Bob Fullhart asked me, should we close it, not close it? Here's the things that are going on. So essentially what it came down to, I made the decision to support that at that time we should close it. So you can have the discussion if you would like to do something different. I just want to explain the reasons behind why that occurred. So the timing at which it would take to clean it, sterilize it, put new chemicals in, the cost of the chemicals is between $6,000 and $7,000 to get it back operational, fill the pool, stabilize the chemicals. We were looking at a potential, if everything went correct, we'd be looking best case scenario at an end of July time frame to open the pool. The average close date for the pool is August 10th through 12th. So we leave 2.5 to 3 weeks of pool operation, and the X factor in that is all of the pumps and electrical system and the water heater was submerged during the flood. So we would have to have electrical inspections to reopen that. And my thought process was, if we're taking half a day for an electrician to be there on site to go through and inspect our system so we can get the pool back open, there's homes that need re-energized, and that labor could be doing that. So I made the judgment call to go ahead and support Bob's recommendation to close the pool. Again, you can revisit that if you like. On the financial end of things, so there's a gentleman named Jim Furneaux who Dan knows. I contacted the search firm that you guys have retained for the city manager group. I contacted that firm and asked for the best name in the state of Iowa available to come in and help us look at where our finances currently sit as far as funds available to contribute towards this disaster mitigation and workflow process. And then two, we're currently down a position, I guess we'd say total, in the department from a workflow perspective, so to have somebody come in and do a lift. So the initial phase of what Jim would do is just a 2 to 3 week, a couple days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, on site, contributing to our workplace financial workflow. And then at the end of that, make a recommendation of, here's where I think your situation is, here's my recommendations. And then as a council, you all can make the decision of when you want to hire a full-time CFO. So Tracy has expressed the interest to move back into her clerk position. So that's up to you if you want an interim or you want to fill it right away. But our immediate need, based on the scope of what I was what I was assigned, easier to say, is not only the disaster, but our internal response to the disaster. And right now, that's an area of deficiency that we need more man hours, labor hours in. And so that was the intent of why we reached out to Jim. So Mark Jackson recommended him. Dan knew him. He's got a really good resume. I think you like him. So the initial agreement with him will just be on a contractor basis to come in for a couple weeks. Any questions? All right. If you have anything, happy to answer any that you have, reach out.
Okay, thank you very much, Kevin. Okay, we're going to change up the order here a little bit. I know FEMA is listed first, but we're going to go down to the Iowa Homeland Security report. And Rick, if you'll step up to the mic, please.
I will
Thanks.
step up to the mic. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Rick Biondi, and I do work for the state of Iowa, and more specifically, the Iowa Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, as the mayor did say. My role here with the city is to, I'm wearing two hats really here. I'm overseeing the debris mission that's going on that the state has implemented, and I'm also here to provide technical assistance to the city to navigate through, and as we partner up with FEMA to deliver the Public Assistance Grant Program. Public Assistance Grant Program, a little misleading. It's not, you think public assistance, it might be for the general public and homeowners, that kind of thing, which it's not. It's the Public Assistance Grant Program is intended to help the city with, to reimburse for disaster-related expenses and for damages and costs you're incurring for the emergency work and any debris type operations. So those are my two roles here really to help you navigate that, and I hope I don't steal one of our FEMA partners' thunder here, but I'm gonna first give you a quick update on the debris mission that's going on. So as you know, early on, there was a mission assignment that came to Iowa Homeland Security to provide some assistance for debris removal, hence all of the 50-some orange trucks you saw racing around town for a week or so. As of last Friday, that mission came to an end, and the state has hired, through our master agreements from the state, has hired a contractor, Environmental Infrastructure Services, EIS, and they also, part of their Iowa Demolition is also part of that. As of last Friday, they've taken over that mission, and I just want to give you a couple quick updates on where we're at with that. So as you know, we have there's two debris staging sites that were set up early on. One was at the pool site, and the second one, well, there's actually at the fairgrounds. There's actually two different piles going at the fairgrounds. So as of tonight, trying to get, have a plan to move forward here and show some progress. The pool site was intended for homeowners to bring in debris on their own. That pool site will close tonight, and it's gonna be barricaded up, basically saying to to homeowners that bring their debris there to please take it to the fairground site. The reason being is that we're finishing up shredding all of that debris at the pool site, and hauling out of that shredded debris will start tomorrow until it's all gone. And simultaneously, we call them white goods, all the appliances and everything that's piled up there are currently being demanufactured, I think is the right term. So for any of those things to go to a recycler, that there's so many of them, they won't take any of it unless they're demanufactured, which means like just the electronic components and maybe some mercury switches and things that cannot go to the landfill because they are hazardous. there is somebody on site now through our contractor that's going through one at a time, taking those units, taking the back off and demanufacturing those things and putting them in piles. So that's occurring right now. Once all of the hauling out ends, then everything's out of there, the contractor's gonna take like a power broom or something and clean up the lot for you folks. And that's scheduled to be turned back over to the city a week from today. That's the goal. So you can have your parking lot back, essentially. So, so the other aspect of the debris clearing is from the right-of-way, and that's what the DOT was doing. But so the contractor we have hired has, they've put out into the city, they've essentially divided the city into 6 sections. I don't want to call them quadrants. There's 6 sections essentially, and they've got a collection crew in each one of those 6 sections around the city. And there's currently 2 we call it household hazardous waste, paint cans, household flammables, those kinds of things that have come to the curb and have gone to various places. We've got 2 crews going around collecting that and preparing to dispose of those properly. And we also have 1 appliance crew. The 2 household hazardous waste crews are covering the whole city, and then the appliance crews, there's 1 of those, and they're also demanufacturing those. There's 1 crew going around picking up the remainder of that. So, as you know, with any operation, we have to bring it to a close at some point. And the state's not here to force our will upon you. We're just here to assist you. So our goal is to, and I've talked to our debris contractor, and July 22nd, which is a Monday, will be the final pass that they were instructing them to make to collect from the city right-of-way. So if we could get some help from city staff in getting that word out. So the 22nd's on a Monday. So it would be great, say maybe the Thursday before, to try to get the word out. That leaves 1 more weekend to say, if you want this picked up from the right-of-way, please get it to the right-of-way. We'll make our 1 last pass. Once the cleanup crew in any one of those quadrants goes through and it's cleaned, we're gonna verify it, and if anything else comes out, we're not going back to get it. And so, that being said, as with any disaster, there's gonna be some residual things coming out. So the city may end up, having to pick up, some residual debris from right-of-way or whatever that might be, and then wherever you think you need to stage it, I guess. And so I would recommend tracking that for the public assistance program, so staff time we can try and get reimbursement for that. So that's the right-of-way clearing. The other site at the fairgrounds, so once we close the park site and all the shredding's done, everything's, we're done shredding that debris, we're gonna move it to the fairgrounds. There's currently 1 shredder at the fairgrounds out on that massive pile that the DOT hauled, Mount Trashmore, or whatever you can call it, you might want to call it there. But anyway, they're grinding there now. And then we're going to take the grinder from the park up there and have 2 grinders going. So, and then we're going to start hauling out. This contractor has hired local companies to come in and help haul all this out. So I thought that was a good deal for them they were kind of involved in that in the beginning. So we're using some local haulers to do that. Let's see here. So after, we're really shooting for, I've heard there's something called the Clay County Fair. Is that a big deal around here? I imagine probably is. I know that is. I'm just being silly here. So I know the city and the county would love to have that area turned back over to them. So this is an early date, we got to start somewhere to have that all ready to turn back over to them by August 15th. And I think that's the early date. We're going to start there. It may bump out forward a little bit, but we know when is it September 7th, I think, is when that starts?
Yeah,
Yeah.
7th or 8th, right in there.
Right, so after that large pile that's out in the grass, that grassy area, once that's all hauled out, that site is gonna be it has just gotten pummeled with debris driven into the ground. And so what we're gonna do is have the contractor come in and scrape about 18 inches maybe or so, with all that heavy equipment. They're driving, metal and wood and just all kinds of things down in there. That could be a problem. So they're gonna go through and scrape that out. We're probably looking at about 2 acres up in that area, and then have that disposed of. And then some dirt will have to come back in, and we'll get that all seeded and finished up. And the same will be true for the parking lot. That parking lot, the asphalt section kind of up front where the homeowners are taking debris there, at some point we'll keep that open as long as possible until we're ready. We're getting close to the end, and we just can't keep equipment just sitting there trying to grind every other day or something. At some point, we're gonna have to cut that off as well. So, and then I would imagine that parking lot, it's asphalt. Imagine it's gonna get beat up pretty bad, and it already is. And I don't think it was ever designed to have, giant end loaders and track machines and debris piles on it like that. So we're gonna work with, hopefully we can work with FEMA to try to get that restored. And if not, I'm sure, the city will take some measures to have that restored for the county. I'm sure you don't want to turn that back over with all the holes and everything in it. So we'll try to run that through the public assistance program, but we'll see. So that's really just an update on our goal and for the debris operation. Any questions about that before I move on to the public assistance grant program? This one, the second half, shouldn't take too terribly long, but any questions about debris?
Just real quick, so if the date is July 22nd when they make their last pass on the right-of-way, so people will be able to deliver their personal items to that north lot on the fairgrounds, or will they need to go to the transfer station?
They will.
At what point will be the cutoff for delivering goods there, I guess, is my...
Yeah, so right now I don't have a cutoff date for the fairgrounds where they can deliver it, but we'll let you know, so that information can get out. And then, once that point comes, then the city will just have to decide how you want to handle it from there. So it'll be the point where there's not much coming in, and like, as I mentioned, to keep all that equipment there, to grind every other day or, once a week, it won't be very cost effective. So I hope I answered your question in a roundabout way there, sorry.
Rick, I have one for you, please. So if July 22nd is the last day for right-of-way, and I believe you mentioned Thursday, so is it your desire then that all residents should have their personal items that were affected out the Thursday before the 22nd? Or, if I make it on the 21st, am I going to be good?
Yes, you'll be good. So the 22nd is the day that the contractor is going to begin the final pass-through.
Okay.
And so, if you're a house, that's the very first one to get done on Monday the 22nd, and we move on to the next house or down the street, whatever. Anything that comes out, unfortunately, is gonna remain. We're gonna make one pass through every, wherever's out there, and we're not just gonna keep going around in a circle all day long, all day long, all day long. It's just gonna be one pass and we're done. So
Appreciate that.
The reason I brought Thursday up is so you can maybe get the word out to them to say, hey,
Yeah.
Monday, the 22nd is the final pass. So if you want it picked up, better get it out there, so.
And then for clarity then, so just assume everyone got everything out on the 21st. The entire town then, per the contract, would be completely clean on the right of way. Is that accurate?
Yes,
Thank you.
that's the goal, correct.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
this might be a statement for you or for Sharifa. I was with Samaritan's Purse this morning, and I can't speak for them, but if I understood them correctly, they have over 500 work orders still, and they're planning on staying till at least August 3rd, and longer if needed. And, you know, of course, there's potentially still going to be bringing
Yeah.
things out past the 22nd. So I don't know if Sharifa needs to reach out to them or what that would look like, but just to be aware that that could still be quite a lot of houses that will be bringing debris out after that cutoff date.
Thanks, David. Okay. Any other questions for Rick?
Yeah, I wanted to
Yeah.
make just one clarification. I think you had said the entire town will have the debris picked up. Our contractor, the state and the contractor will only pick up debris from the right of way. Anything that's up in parking lots, up by the houses, we're not sending, there's too much liability involved there. We're not going up into those areas. So yes, the right of ways will be cleared on that date, so, okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. I can give you
Yep.
just a quick update on the PA program if you
sure.
don't matter, if you don't mind, excuse me.
No.
Yep, so the Clay County did receive a presidential disaster declaration for public assistance, and it was an expedited declaration, or that was granted, the presidential request that was granted. It essentially turned on two categories of work, categories A and B. We refer to it as debris removal and emergency protective measures. So expenses that the city, those programs are turned on right now. I'm working with some of the city staff, and we're going to start, getting that program turned on so that, getting that in operation so that if the city has some expenses in those categories, we can get moving on getting those in with FEMA. The other categories of work essentially are for permanent work. Those have not, FEMA has not turned those on yet. I'm going to call it turned on. So we're currently working with city staff and with Clay County staff to obtain, we're doing damage assessments, and so it's just a quick overview of the damages, some expenses. We turn it into FEMA, and we're going to ask that they would please, grant the permanent work categories. And so the deadline for us, because we need to submit that to FEMA, so by close of business Friday, we should have the information we need from the county, from the city, including the city and other county governmental entities about these permanent work categories. We'll do another request. The governor will sign it. We'll get it off to FEMA, and then hopefully we'll get that turned on. Once that happens, then we can start addressing damages. So to city-owned infrastructure. So anyway, that's where we're at with that. Any questions about that? That was just real quick.
Okay.
I guess I have one, so to confirm that, clear that up, is by the end of day Friday, you hope then to be in a position where we've, to use your word, turned it on, and the rebuild, say, of our police department, in theory, could then begin thereafter. Is that accurate?
What I'm referring to is obtaining the data. So by the end of the close of business Friday is our deadline that we want to have the data, the cost data, to turn into FEMA to request. That request would go in early next week. And it might take some time for FEMA to vet that. And so, but once we get word for that, then we can begin addressing the permanent work damages that occurred to the city, such as fire or the police station, whatever you said there. So
Okay.
I have,
Yep.
I got to back up a little bit because you said something right at the end. Are you guys not picking up that are in commercial parking lots?
correct.
Okay, and is that city responsible to pick those up? I know there's some businesses that if stuff is really piled high in front of their businesses, so is that under a different category?
No, actually, no. And so they, as far as the state, excuse me, as far as the state engaging in that, there's too much liability. The state, we're not going to go on to private property and remove debris. So the same would be for our contractors. So somehow that debris is going to have to make its way to the right of way. So, that'll likely be something for the city to consider how that's going to happen. So,
Yeah, a lot of the businesses that I'm seeing don't really have that right of way. They're on a frontage road or something that, down there by KICD,
Yeah.
Collectors Cove is a huge pile, and those different areas, Faith Lutheran. I mean, those are the areas I'm concerned of. There isn't really a right of way, so it's all in their parking lot.
sure.
Well, you have South Grand too, where they really don't have a right-of-way for all that to be put on that's gonna fit their piles.
So I just didn't know if that does fall back on the city, do we need to start having a plan for that, or how do we go about that part?
Yeah, it's a conversation I would recommend the city has in, I don't know your city attorney's here, but I'm sure there's probably ways through ordinances or whatever where the city determines, that's a public nuisance, public health and safety threat or whatever. And so through that, I'm not here to tell you guys your business, but maybe through some, legal mechanism that the city has, that you would work with those folks and try to get that picked up. So again, we're here to assist you with, try to get you through the brunt of this. And there'll be some lingering things that go on through the recovery process that obviously the city will have to deal with, so.
Yeah, I'm sure that other communities have had to deal with this same situation, obviously, that you're involved with, and maybe we need to reach out to them and see how they handled this.
Sure.
Because
And
it's
what-
not the first time.
Right, and we can continue to, talk about, ways or, provide some guidance or something.
Okay.
But this isn't the last we'll talk about it, but
Yeah.
as an update, we just can't do that, so.
Yeah.
It's too many legal ramifications involved with that.
And you're in pretty close contact with Public Works and Planning, I know, on a daily basis.
Yes.
So, yeah, okay. Okay,
Anything else?
thank you, Rick.
You're very welcome, my pleasure.
Okay. Next on the agenda, I see we have a large contingent from FEMA here, and Ryan drew the short straw.
Thank you,
But
sir.
he's been here since, I don't know, day 2 or 3, maybe?
The 25th, I arrived here.
Okay, we'll say 3. Okay.
So good evening. Thank you for inviting me here tonight. My name is Ryan Bauman. I am with the FEMA response team out of Kansas City. I've been in Clay County for over 2 weeks now and personally seen the damage in Spencer. FEMA as an agency recognizes that this will be a challenging recovery for a lot of people. That's why we have opened 4 disaster recovery centers throughout the northwest of Iowa. We work with each household on a case-by-case basis. Here in Spencer, we have a disaster recovery center at the Clay County Regional Event Center at the Tower Gate Pavilion. And we are open every day from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. And I want to thank everyone here. We've had a great turnout for helping spread the word that the recovery center is open for people who need help. Some updated numbers so far, people from nearly 600 households have visited the disaster recovery center in Spencer. Just this week, more than 100 first-time visitors have come to the recovery center to meet with us. This is why it's important to continue telling people who've been seriously affected by the flood to come to the recovery center, sit down with us, and tell us about their needs. In addition, FEMA's disaster survivor assistance teams are still going door to door in affected neighborhoods to help people apply for assistance. In Clay County, FEMA has already approved more than 1,500 households for disaster assistance money. We have provided more than $16 million to survivors. This money is to help with serious needs, temporary place to live, and for home repairs and personal property that were destroyed. For people that still need to apply, there are 3 ways to apply. Visit the Disaster Recovery Center, call us directly at 1-800-621-3362, or apply online at disasterassistance.gov. Everyone who applies for FEMA assistance will receive a letter. It will be either by mail or email, depending on what they chose when they register. Please read the letter carefully, and if you have questions about the letter, visit us at the Disaster Recovery Center. Thank you for the invitation to be here tonight, and please continue to encourage survivors to visit us at the Disaster Recovery Center.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions for Ryan?
Ryan, I have a question for you. Can you walk me through, if I am a homeowner and I was impacted and I take funds from FEMA, what are going to be the requirements placed upon me moving forward thereafter?
So there are no requirements. The only issue is if it is you are in a flood zone. So some letters, the letters from FEMA will tell the homeowners that they live in a high-risk flood zone. This is based on the flood map that took effect in Spencer 5 months ago after being adopted by the community. Most of the south side of Spencer is either in a high-risk flood zone or near it. These high-risk flood zones are called special flood hazard zones. These areas have a 1% or greater chance of flooding every year. For homeowners in these areas, flood insurance is already required for everyone with a federally backed mortgage. If you live in a high-risk flood zone and are approved for FEMA disaster assistance, you will receive a letter saying flood insurance is now required if you accept FEMA money. Only people within the high-risk flood zones will receive letters saying they have a flood insurance requirement. Currently, this affects about 7% of the 1,500 people who have been approved for assistance, or about 100 households overall in Clay County.
And so if I don't have a mortgage any longer, am I going to be required moving forward to have flood insurance?
You are. So the letter will say you have 30 days to return the money to FEMA to avoid the flood insurance requirement. For people in this situation for the first time, FEMA is purchasing 3 years of flood insurance coverage for them. It's part of the disaster assistance. FEMA pays the cost of $800 per year. Then the homeowner can choose whether to renew the mortgage or renew the coverage. If they choose to not renew the flood insurance policy, if something would happen in the future, you may be ineligible for federal assistance funds for not having the coverage.
Okay, and then my final question then would be, let's say I choose not to take any disaster relief on this occasion, and I choose not to proceed with flood insurance, and the unthinkable happens, and 5 years down the road we find ourselves in this situation again. Are they eligible to apply at that point?
That I will have to get back for you on that. I will follow up with you on the answer for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ryan. Unless there are other questions? Yeah.
One of the simple questions I've been having now is, the people that accept FEMA, they have to report that on taxes?
I will follow up with that as well. I've heard that once or twice too, and I will follow up with that. In a disaster recovery area, once a county is federally disaster, there is an IRS form, and it is on the Iowa Daily Fact Sheet that we send out that explains that, but I will follow up with that and get back to you.
One more question. So, if someone receives a response that they're denied for whatever reason, perhaps they entered information in wrongly or something like that, the best course of action for them would be to visit you guys at at Tower Pavilion?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
sir. Come in with any documents you have and speak to our people there.
And to that end, there is an appeal process too for people that have received an amount, and if for some reason they don't think it's adequate, they can appeal that decision.
Yes, they can. And that is go to the Disaster Recovery Center, visit us there, and we
Exactly.
can help with that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Spencer Municipal Utilities, Steve Pick.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Since our last update here, we have recovered all of our electric system. Everything is back on. We do have about 500 electric meters that are currently off. That's obviously due to the condition of the home or building. I would say about half of those are apartment buildings or structures, just for your information. Water, we did lift the boil advisory, I believe, a week ago yesterday. I can't remember if that was before or after we met last. On communications, we're working individual tickets now that more citizens are back in their homes and electricity is being restored. We're getting a lot more calls on internet, TV, and telephone where the equipment, customer premise equipment, usually is in the basement, and a lot of times that got wet. So we're out doing those one at a time. I think today we were booking appointments for midday Friday. So we're backlogged about a day and a half at this point, but we're doing well, keeping up. Any questions?
Okay. Any questions for Steve?
How's your facility?
ServPro finished up mitigation yesterday. Dennison Drywall did a walkthrough today. They're planning to be on site tail end of this week or early next week to start putting it back together.
Good. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Steve. Sticking with energy, Black Hills Energy, Pete Hamill.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. On behalf of Black Hills Energy, first of all, I want to thank you for allowing us to speak this evening. My name is Pete Hamill, General Manager of Black Hills Iowa Gas Operations. So I'll start with the recap of kind of where we started, seeing I missed this meeting last week. On the morning of the 21st, 22nd, we interrupted, and we had about, first of all, we serve about 4,200 customers within the city limits of Spencer. And of those 4,200 customers, about 2,200, so about half of our customers suffered direct impact of the floodwaters itself. A number of other members or customers of ours suffered indirect impact, and those will be ongoing, and assessing those will be ongoing into the future. So initially we did, for the safety of the system, interrupt gas flow to the south half of Spencer, which is roughly from the river is what we're designating the south half, the river to Highway 18 and beyond. We interrupted gas service to that evening of Sunday, the 23rd, I believe it was, and we were able to restore gas service to that area of town the following Saturday on the 29th. As of last Wednesday, the 3rd, we were able to re-energize all distribution mains in that area of town. And what that is the gas that carries into the neighborhoods. So we were working directly with the individual customers in that area. So from basically our primary focus coming into the event or out of the event was to reestablish gas to those customers on the south half of town that were not directly impacted, and restore gas to some of the major customers, industries, hotels so they could provide housing, as well as restaurants so they could provide food, and then customers on further south who did not have the flood impacts. We were able to do that safely and successfully on the 29th. From there, we've continued to work throughout the week, and we're about approximately 1,000 customers, a little over 1,000 customers, so about 50% of those directly impacted customers have had gas service restored. We're continuing to work in groups of 2, and we've had about anywhere between 10 and 20 members of our staff here on any day. We've had over 40 staff members from around Iowa as well as our neighboring states. So Black Hills operates in 6 states. We've had employees from Arkansas, Kansas, Iowa, and Nebraska. And next week we'll have some members of our Colorado staff join us. We're continuing to work extended hours to provide service when our customers need it. And we're continuing to follow a local protocol where we're calling prior to meeting the customer and make sure they're home. We're also connecting with the customers through our social media channel, our web page, and other direct media outlets, and then working with the city as well. So thank you to the city for your partnership. And then we've also worked with some of the plumbers and other utility providers. And today we actually went out in the field and met directly with some customers and plumbers to gauge what kind of trouble they're having with our systems with getting gas back. And we're hopefully increasing that two-way communication between us and the customers. Moving forward, I would expect us to continue this path of restoration over the next 3 weeks. It is going to be a long restoration process. I know that some of our customers, many of our customers, will need a period beyond that. We'll continue to support the needs of the Spencer community beyond that, and we'll continue to bring resources in as necessary. Any questions?
Questions for Pete?
I do.
Tom?
Just for the public's information, the process of getting gas reinstated.
So if your home has been affected, your home and where the appliances are housed specifically has been affected by any type of floodwaters, backups, things of that nature, manufacturers recommend replacement of either the individual parts or the appliance itself. And that's why we've engaged with the local plumbers. Our guidance is have a licensed professional look at that appliance to verify, is it usable? Do we need to repair parts? Does it need to be replaced in its entirety? Once that step in the process has been completed, they can call into our call center, request what we call a relight, and we're operating in a first in, first out type of order, and we're managing that through the local office. There are some questions. We've had a lot of customers that are confused by, what does it mean for the inspection? We've had some plumbers that have said that, how can I fully inspect without gas on? We're working through those one-off questions as we encounter them.
Okay. Yep. Anyone else?
Yeah, Pete, I guess is the approximately 1,100 or 1,000 that still are not online yet, is it simply a matter of getting techs to do a swap out of the meter, or is there something else that you're still trying to work through?
So externally from our infrastructure, we do have a number. I would say we're probably in that 500 area of meters that need to be replaced. So we've used the guide that if a meter's been submerged in that regulator, which is part of that meter setup, if it's been submerged under flood waters or any type of water, that we'll replace it. So the number of customers still impacted is higher than the number of meters that need to be replaced. We are continuing to replace those meters and balancing that work with the number of relights customers that are ready for us to come into the home and establish gas again. So it's kind of twofold. One fold is the infrastructure side. The other fold is whether or not the customers are actually ready for natural gas to be reinstated.
Okay. And then it's still likely too early to definitively answer this, but is there any indication on Black Hill's part that a concern about winter time and still having clients without service?
That is ultimately, our ultimate goal is to provide safe, reliable energy, and hot water is nice now. Heat in the wintertime is more important. We will ensure that we have resources available to work with customers if that need arises. Wintertime, after a flood event, wintertime does create some unique challenges with natural gas systems, and we'll ensure that we are here and ready to respond to that. Sometimes there can be moisture in the system that wasn't properly evacuated from the system, and that can freeze up.
And I don't want to belabor it, but what would, just off for educational purposes, what would I experience if something like that were happening in my home?
You'd have either your furnace, water heater, cooktop, whatever gas appliance you have, you would not have gas service to that. So you may not have hot water, you may not have heat. You'd place a call to our call center, we'd investigate it, determine if it truly was that or another issue.
Okay. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, Clay County Emergency Management, Eric Tigas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilman. Just a couple quick things, and Councilman Lyons touched on it. There's still a big need in our community for the mucking out and the assistance of people mucking out and getting debris to the right-of-way. You know, and Rick with the state talked a lot about the plan, and I think we have a pretty good handle on getting stuff from the right of way and to this disposal. But I know Samaritan's Purse, there's other organizations working, but there's still a big need to assist people in getting debris out of their homes. And so as you work with your churches and community and civic groups and are out in public, I would encourage you to continue to, you know, we're 2.5 weeks post-event, and so our attention span is short, and so we start looking at the next thing, and there still is a great need, and we want to assist as many people as possible. And then the second thing I'll touch on quickly, and I don't know, Mayor Baumgars, if you're going to touch about with Governor Reynolds, but I'll just very quickly, Governor Reynolds was here, and so tomorrow she's going to make a press conference, a formal announcement about housing assistance. They're not exactly sure what that looks like yet, but there's going to be a rollout next week, and so you know, I think that, and I've spoken about this before, that you know, we're pretty comfortable with the shelter and what we're doing there and how we're transitioning that, but I think we need better optics on our community and what the needs and the needs assessment, and so I brought that up to the governor and her staff, and they've assured us that there's going to be a process. It's going to start with the DRC, and so Ryan did a wonderful job of just encouraging. But if you haven't gone to the DRC, if you haven't spoken with FEMA, that's the first step to everything. And so we really need to encourage everybody to go to the DRC and get that information to them. The state's going to utilize that and the housing assistance and all that stuff that's going to be spinning up down the road. And so those are the two things I'll touch on briefly, just that there is still a great need in our community for debris removal out of houses, and go sign up at the DRC, and when we know more about what this officially looks like, the housing needs and stuff, we'll roll that out as well.
Thanks, Eric. And since you mentioned it, with regard to Governor Reynolds being here, it was nice to see Governor Reynolds here. She's, I think this is the third trip to Spencer that she's made in the last 2.5 weeks. And she did give us a bit of a preview with regard to 3 programs that the state is going to be rolling out for those counties that were declared disaster areas, and they all deal with housing, and I think there'll be more details about that tomorrow. One is a new housing program that they're going to roll out for, and I don't know how many millions of dollars there are.
I believe it was 10 million.
Okay, certainly not enough, but it's something. And it's going to be on a grant basis, not a tax credit basis, was my understanding. And then a rehabilitation and refurbishing plan, and I think that was like $6.5 million or something, and up to $50,000 max, and that's going to be with the Iowa Finance Authority. And then Homes for Iowa, which is kind of the prison-built homes, as I understand it. They're going to have some of those ready to go. Certainly not enough, but it's something, that's for sure. So, and there'll be more things within that program as well that she talked about and her team talked about.
Correct.
Yeah. So, any questions for Eric?
Eric, real fast, I don't see them here, Red Cross, they're still present currently, if I'm not mistaken, and I was in a meeting with you, I think it was Monday. Is there anything that you want to update on as far as on that, or encouraging people to go talk to them?
So the Red Cross is still actively operating our shelter. We had some discussion on Monday about that transition, and so they're actively working on that. I don't know if Sharif is going to touch on that. I don't want to steal her, but I believe we were it's like in the mid 60s on Monday. I believe we're down to 30-ish. You know, Sharifa? I believe that's correct. That we're it's progressing the right way.
Okay, thanks, Eric.
Thanks.
And speaking of Sharifa Jones from the Spencer Chamber, who's been wearing a lot of hats, and whichever one you want to wear right now, you can report on.
I'd like to say they were fun hats, but they're not.
No.
So shelter, I actually don't have a count as of today, but have been working with shelters. I know early this week we were at about 60, but I know that Brittany Speaker and her team have been working really diligently on housing, and then having larger housing conversations, not only on a community level, but also a countywide level, and making sure that we're also thinking about, what does Spencer look like, what does Clay County look like in the next 20 to 40 years as well, and that we're thoughtful in that housing. So thinking short-term as well as long-term. In terms of food, I believe it was announced today that Upper Des Moines is now relocated into what was Spencer Ag or Northwest Iowa Fitness. So we've been unloading semis. I shouldn't say we, but I have some staff that have been helping with that, as well as some other, I believe city staff have been helping with getting some semi-trailers unloaded and getting them set up. The plan is that they will open officially at that location starting on Monday. They will be able to assist individuals that are, maybe based on income needs, and then also community-wide as well. So I want to make sure that everyone knows that if there are community-wide needs, that they will still be able to assist in that area. And we'll continue to work with them. As you may know, on June 21st, we helped them advertise their Battle of the Businesses, and businesses signed up to provide different products from pancakes to syrup to canned spaghetti sauce, and that was on June 21st. So all of those items that were donated on June 21st were lost. So we'll continue to work with them and make sure that we can get a really cohesive list out and try to do that maybe on a weekly basis or as needed, as far as what is needed for them to continue to make sure that our community members are fed. Donations, continue to work with the Clay County Community Foundation, the School Foundation, as well as Love Takes Root, and then also the Chamber Foundation on those financial contributions. And so I'll be working, with my board specifically, and I know each of those will be working to make sure that those funds get distributed to those that are in need of them. The school is certainly working to help set up those classrooms that were lost, especially at Lincoln School, and also some impact at Johnson. Love Takes Root. They're going to be working specifically with the High Noon Kiwanis to make sure that children going back to school have the necessary supplies that they will need. The Chamber Foundation, we're going to be able to assist, businesses as well as potentially other community needs as well. And then the Community Foundation, they specifically work with other nonprofits. We are also working with a partner that reached out to us. So we're hoping to be able to provide something fun for kids to do. And I know we're going to be talking to them tomorrow, I believe, and so I don't want to talk too much about that. But, I know with the Aquatic Center closing and with also just, making sure that some people can have life as normal as possible, we're hopeful that we can be able to unveil an option for that. So. In regards to volunteers, the biggest thing I can say is, yes, we've got Samaritan's Purse in our community. We also have the Southern Baptist. They've all been great. I know Samaritan's Purse does have a large list of work orders. We are working through that, and Jessica might have some more information because she's really, taking that, and I'm kind of assisting her with that need. But we do know that they have a large number of work orders that need to get into a system that is used statewide. And so we're working through that specifically. What I would say as well is that we do have a link, so we've been in this, what is this, day 20 or something like that. There is a link that we need people to log their time that they started, whether you were a sandbagger on Saturday morning or you were working yesterday with your neighbor, and maybe you didn't go through Samaritan's Purse or you did not go through Southern Baptist. We need you to fill in your time because every hour counts. If you have questions about that, you're welcome to call the chamber, also at City Hall. My understanding is that sheet ultimately will end up going to Mary Beth. So we have worked to get that out there, and we'll continue to do that on the chamber's side as well. In terms of businesses as well, working directly with SBDC and the SBA, Larry Wajda, as well as the Iowa Lakes Corridor, and in different aspects, so understanding where the businesses are at, what some of their needs are. SBDC and SBA, they've been working on assessments and really have been boots on the ground, which is appreciated. The Corridor, I've been working with them. Ironically, about 3 weeks ago, we had met to talk about businesses and buildings and those that we know that have open spaces and those that we know that need spaces. So that's spreadsheet had been started, and so we continue to work on that and making sure that we can relocate businesses that are able to operate into temporary locations while their buildings are rehabbed. So we continue to work on that, and then just coming up with lists of other needs. We're getting different phone calls every day. Today, it started this week of, we need street sweepers in our parking lot. So working with Mark White and city staff on those types of things. And, ultimately, the next question is going to be, I need to take my kids' school shopping. And so we are aware of that and working through that, so we can obviously also try to retain as many of those dollars locally, therefore keeping businesses open and also employees employed. So that's all I have, a real quick overview. And the Clay County Fair is September 7th through the 15th. We will be looking forward to that, and I know everybody will be working diligently to get to that point. So any questions? Yes.
So Upper Des Moines, everything from foundation will end up at
That's correct, yes. So while, we've talked a lot about we want churches that were shelters or businesses that were shelters initially, we want them to go back to being in their business. It might have been a church or John Deere, for example. We also want Foundation Church. They're kind of one of those last pieces. We want Foundation Church to be able to come back to be a church. They were able to do that last weekend. We want them to be able to have their full facility back. So everything will transition from Foundation Church to Upper Des Moines, and we will make sure to get that out to the community as well. And UDMO has actually been working with Foundation Church for probably the last week to 10 days, I would say, once they were able to get back into the community and assess their situation. And that's been an amazing just transformation. And Foundation Church, all of these churches, they answered my phone call and have just knocked it out of the park. It's absolutely unbelievable. And Megan and Nicholas just need to be commended for the work that they've done as well as their volunteers. So yes, they will be out of the food distribution and back to church, and Upper Des Moines will be back into food distribution.
And if people wanted to take a bag of groceries to Upper Des Moines, they're accepting them?
Yes, what I would say is maybe if you can hold off and do that next week, and we'll work with Dawn to get a list out of things that are needed, and we will work through that. The other question that we really have now is clothing. Upper Des Moines does not do clothing. We really I think they try to keep that separate for some obviously hygiene reasons. And so we're working through where can people take clothing. And when I say clothing, it needs to be clean. New is great. It really can't be soiled. Unfortunately, those items need to go to the curb. And so St. Joseph's Church, we did find out on Monday that they are full at this point, and they were not taking any contributions. If that changes, we'll make sure to get that out to the community. I did have a conversation today with Treasure Village in Sheldon. They are taking contributions. Again, it needs to be clean and not soiled. So if you come from a family that has pets or a smoking home, we do need you just to go ahead and put that out on the curb. And I know that hurts, but we do need people to be able to have clean clothing as well. So we'll continue to work through what those options are. Obviously, Goodwill. However, we can't guarantee that those donations are going to stay locally.
Thank you.
Any other
Yes.
questions for Sharifa? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Okay, Spencer Hospital, Brenda's here, not Rebecca. Yeah. No, not at all, not at all. No, we get the CEO.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. All right, so obviously as a hospital, our main function was to mobilize resources to continue to meet the healthcare needs of the community during the disaster. It was with the foresight of our ambulance crew that they, in time, put an ambulance on the south side and had an ambulance on the north side, because within a very short time of doing that, you were unable to cross from one side to the other. So with that said, we were able to pick up patients on the south side, take them to the rescue boat, bring them across the water to the north ambulance, and then come to the hospital. We quickly realized that we were unable to get supplies back and forth, and there were several patients that the line had kind of backed up and we needed to get them going. So Wings Air Rescue out of Sioux City had volunteered to come and base a helicopter here for 24 hours, which they did, and they were able to fly supplies from the north to the south and bring a few patients back over. There were about 4 or 5 of those crew members that spent the night at the hospital and were at our beck and call, so we are super thankful for that. Just to give you a flavor of what was happening with EMS, and it was obviously also with the help of the Spencer Fire and Rescue as well. There were 89 calls from June 22nd to June 30th, so that's 9 days. Typically in a month, we do 120. So in 9 days, we did 89. 41 of those were flood-related, whether it was CO2 poisoning, injury, infection, medical emergency, because they were displaced from their residence. 48 of those were just regular responses that were happening. During the first 3 days of this event, our call volumes were 4 times greater than our daily average call volume. We had 3 ambulances staffed 24/7, and we had the crew on the south side. We were unable to get them relief, so they worked super hard on the south side for many long hours. And we continued to staff for the following week, 2 crews at all times to make sure we could meet the needs, and we were still averaging about 10 calls a day following the immediacy of the flood. We're currently operating 1 ambulance 24/7 and trying to have a backup crew on. We are starting to see some injuries from people cleaning out their debris and that sort of thing. I do want to also credit, we had lots of phone calls from other area hospitals and health systems that wanted to help during the disaster as it was happening. So Buena Vista Regional Medical Center, Palo Alto County Health System, Pocahontas, SAC, and again, Wings Air Rescue all arrived with ambulances and staff to help out in that first 48 hours. So that was very, very beneficial. So that was what we did immediately. At the same time as patients were being rescued, they were unable to grab their medications and get anything that they needed as far as oxygen supplies. So our next immediate need was to mobilize enough oxygen and some tanks and the supplies that were needed for that, and to figure out how we were going to get patients their medications that they needed, because all of the pharmacies were also flooded. So that was a challenge, but a credit to the Spencer Hospital pharmacy staff that was able to work with some local physicians and ensure that we were able to provide that. In fact, we also made sure we did rounds in the shelters for several days to make sure that we were able to get patients their medications in the shelter as well. We also had nurses and some medical staff that also made sure they helped staff the shelters for the first, probably through Monday, and then a few days after that until Red Cross could kind of take over. So we made sure that we had nurses and healthcare staff that were rounding out there, taking supplies back and forth and taking care of what was needed. We set up a Tdap or a tetanus clinic at the hospital for free. We gave 1,000 vaccinations. From the very second we opened at 2 o'clock on that first day, we had 4 people waiting in line at 2 o'clock, and it was just a steady flow. And we also made sure that we did first responders and city staff, and rather than require them to come to the hospital, we came to you so that you could keep working while you were doing that. We also sent Rebecca, our marketing director, to Incident Command so that she could hear the messages and also report off what the hospital was doing. I want to credit all of you and Rebecca for doing great communication. I feel like there was lots of daily good communication sent out there to residents with links to resources, and Rebecca did a nice job of making sure we had a daily post from the hospital Facebook site so that people could access information. We also, I'm sure you're familiar with Jill Barr and our LINK program, and she also has been instrumental in making sure that we're pushing out all of the resources that are available for the mental toll that this can take on families and people, flood victims, and really the whole community in general. And I think that will be ongoing over the next year. It's almost like a post-traumatic stress. And so we're going to continue to make sure that we're offering those resources and doing those things as well. While the same time this was happening, there was a flood going on in Sioux Rapids, and we have a medical clinic there in Sioux Rapids, which is completely destroyed. And so we have found a temporary location, which will open on Monday, so that we're able to continue to function in Sioux Rapids to provide health care. We also have a physical therapy clinic that happens in Sioux Rapids 4 days a week, and so we were also able to secure a location for that, and that has already started, so that's good. I also would like to just credit all of my staff at the hospital and all of those. I had more resources than I needed, and that sounds crazy because usually you're calling around and looking for other people, but the flood of assistance and people wanting to help was amazing. We also then set up a call center at the hospital, and we have staffed and manned the call center. We currently today are still manning a call center. The first probably 48 to 72 hours, it was nonstop, 4 phone lines going at all times. That has dwindled down to only 3 calls over the weekend and about 3 to 4 calls per day. So we continue to do that. So happy to answer any questions. Just proud of the way the whole community pulled together and worked together. And this is proof of why it's important to have a hospital in our community.
Yeah. Any questions for Brenda?
Brenda, I have one for you.
Yeah.
Early on, I know that you had experienced some impact here locally. Is Avera and the hospital fully back online with the regular appointments that were scheduled going forward, or is there still some impact on your end?
Actually, the Avera Family Care Clinic is up and running with normal hours. The hospital only closed outpatient services for 1 day, and that was on the Monday following the flood. Otherwise, all services have been in operation the entire time.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Appreciate it. Okay, now I know that Alan Batchelor, you're not on the agenda, but you're okay not giving a report? Okay, because I know you're never at a loss for words. But, yeah, no, you don't want me to pick the topic. Okay. Okay, we'll move down to department head reports. Adam, Planning Department, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. And outside of my weekly updates, got some numbers and some data to share and some operation and procedural items to move forward. The department has been analyzing and documenting compromised structures from the flood disaster. After the dust and waters have settled, the number of residential structures with foundational compromise is up to approximately 98. These have been GPSed in my system with imagery of the collapses and cave-ins. About 10 or so have become more apparent after property owners and contractors have had the ability to analyze further on their own property, outside of like decks and other items covering up potential small items that are caved in. To correlate with that, the Army Corps of Engineers is still working on tallying their rapid assessment forms in the database that they correlate with. Property owners are working with staff to navigate the processes moving forward with this. And most inquiries in this realm are like-for-like foundation repairs, cinder block to cinder block, requiring no building permit outside of select properties that are within the 100-year floodplain. And kind of to branch off of Ryan's FEMA update with his floodplain, staff and the DNR work towards, they're outside of the insurance, we work towards the floodplain development and permitting those properties. Staff is working closely with the DNR on language and the process to track market value of substantial damage at a rate of equal or greater than 50% of damaged structures assessed value. Staff is doing everything possible to keep the people's progress moving forward with their projects. And later, by next week, we'll have a boilerplate letter with the substantial damage definition, floodplain procedures, and then also kind of a worksheet that helps you guide through filling that information out. Staff has been diligently inspecting and approving private electrical work caused by the flooding disaster. In a 2-week time frame, staff has performed requested inspections on approximately 350 residential properties and has received approximately 320 structures that have filed for waivers for rapid re-energizing. Staff is working rapidly on this process and to move this process safely as possible. From an operations standpoint, staff is working at a capacity of approximately 85% disaster workload, 10% day-to-day operations, and 5% forward planning. And I would just like to take a quick minute to take the time to thank members of the community for working positively with my department as we navigate the road ahead and implement strategies to rapidly work through items safely and properly. Any questions?
Questions for Adam?
Adam, what's going to be the process related to the 98 properties that you've identified with foundation issues?
So a typical process would be if it's a like-for-like repair due to Spencer not having a structural or building code, that would require no permit. So it would be recommended that the person seek out a foundational contractor or a structural engineer or both to move forward with their requested or suggested repairs. We've had inquiries and we've passed that information along, or we've also had people thinking they won't have a plan within 2 months. They're just trying to still assess everything and move everything. So it's kind of been at a case-by-case determination. But yeah, with the city not having an adopted structural code requiring any footings or reinforced concrete basements, it's kind of a like-for-like repair.
Okay, and so the homes that received the red circle and X and then were red tagged by the AIA group as being deemed as not being able to be occupied, is that just, is that the official stance of city staff, or is that informational?
Yep, that would be city staff informational and recommendational. So, and then after reviewing the Army Corps of Engineers output, the bottom of the placard says, do not remove unless city authorization is approved, and that we're working through that process to have that ability to potentially just remove those after the assessment.
Okay, well, I guess walk me through.
With the repair plan in place, or if something's under repair.
Okay, so it's not informational. Those placards then are going to be utilized by your department moving forward for what purpose?
Well, we're working through that process. I don't have a good answer for that, but I can get you a better answer shortly.
Okay. And you mentioned a new floodplain assessment, correct?
Floodplain development permits.
Okay, walk me through that. What do you mean by that?
So, in or outside of a flood disaster, say if someone's putting a shed on their property and it's within the 100-year floodplain designation, it requires a floodplain developmental permit. And that's just a permitting process that, since the city of Spencer has been deemed with the NFIP status since 1981, that we as city officials take over that responsibility outside of, since we're in that program. If we weren't in that program, the state would oversee that process, which would make it quite a longer process. So since we've been a part of that program, it's a permitting process to redevelop within the 100-year floodplain.
Okay, so not just related to maybe adding a shed, but if I want to rehab my home, am I also going to fall under those requirements?
Correct, yes. So a repair, and that'll all be in line with the packetable information that we'll be providing.
And so what additional requirements does something like that place on the homeowner?
It would be tracking their substantial damage in portion with the permit. The permit will be free, and then I guess I'm not.
Well, I guess, sure, I appreciate that. What I'm attempting to identify, and what I think we should probably take a moment and be very clear and transparent on, is exactly what is city staff, and specifically your department, going to be requiring via our code or anything else out of this. I mean, I'll give you an example, and it's not meant to be frightening. It's meant because I believe we need to have this conversation publicly. There were a comment made about, and it was substantial damage, over 50%, and those homes being required to come up to the new elevational flood plain elevation. Is that something that homeowners possibly are going to have to navigate moving forward?
That would be a potential, yes.
Let's talk about that, because if I'm putting my home together now and I'm not at the elevation and I'm substantially damaged, it kind of sounds like I may be in a situation where I put my home back together only to be told that I have to raise my house up to a new elevation.
With that potential, but the first thing that would determine that would be the market value of the damage, if you will. So that typically this process isn't done or put out by now, but our packet will be out probably by next week.
So this is a work that the planning department, this is a process that the planning department is working on. And I think to
Correct.
Brian's point, there may be people out there that are probably wanting to get started
Right, and
as soon
we've
as
had-
possible, and they should probably be checking in.
Correct,
with you.
yep. And we've had a handful, and we have information that's upfront that kind of, anything with developing, rebuilding, repairing, demolishing, it's kind of in an outline up front at City Hall, and I think we've had a couple posts about it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think this also speaks to the point too, that, you know, in a disaster like this, and Kevin has spoken about this too, that so much of the redevelopment and these questions that a lot of people are having fall on the planning department. And do we need more staff in order to take care of some of these issues that we're now confronting?
right.
Yeah.
Don? We may need to have a memo of some kind put together on what this council's authority is related to some of these issues and what requirements as a council we will be able to potentially act and change on depending on what comes out of planning.
We can certainly help address those things. As to your question about properties that are in the floodplain, the risk, high risk that was mentioned earlier, if they're more than 50% damaged, they're going to have to comply when they're rebuilt. And comply can be raised, can be flood-proofing that portion of the structure that's below the 1 foot above the flood level.
Right.
Frankly, there's not much that the council's going to be able to do to modify those requirements because they're federal requirements.
Right, correct.
There
As
might
part-
be some other ordinances that you will want to review and address unrelated to the flood program.
Right. As the city being a participant in the National Flood Insurance Program.
Yeah, I appreciate your working on it, I guess. When do you believe that this is going to get out to the community so that people, I mean, Adam, I appreciate there's a lot going on, and I'm
Right.
not trying to put pressure on you.
Nope, we understand it.
Right?
We know how it
but
goes.
The south end,
Right.
based off of just what I'm hearing tonight, and property values, and while I'm not a real estate expert, I dabble in it enough to have an uncomfortable feeling that the south end values are going to indicate a pretty substantial change.
Right.
When is our community members going to get this information in front of them?
It should be by next week. It's a mailing database. It's about 150 some properties. And out of residential and commercial and industrial, there'll be a couple that won't be affected as they're part of a 100-year floodplain that didn't see any harm. And that would be, it's about 3 to 4% of the total registered building numbers in Spencer.
I wonder if it'd be advantageous, once you have this put together, if an informational community meeting would be
I think
had
that would be
so that
that would be proper.
people can come in and hear direct and ask questions directly.
Yep, that would be proper.
So Adam, on this, and I've dealt with this before, so nothing mechanical counts, nothing
Right.
personal property counts, it's only physical damage
There's
that
in-
counts to the 50%.
Correct. There's inclusions and then there's
Yeah. Windows and stuff don't include
Right.
because they can be replaced.
Correct.
Siding, same thing.
And those are all broken out in kind of the DNR's categories that
So-
it says inclusions, exclusions, and then time frame.
And so who will be using judging the value of the property?
So the assessed value of the structure, the most recent assessed value through the county of said structure effective.
But being said that, some of them are undervalued. If they go to a realtor that said that property was worth, on retail value, was worth more than that amount, will they be able to use that amount as the substantial?
There is some lingo that refers to that,
I know there
that
is.
is in the packet, and
know.
I don't have it off the top of my head.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Okay.
Adam, real quick, not related, but you mentioned a like-for-like repair, I think is the word you used for, and you said a contractor could come in. City Hall have a list of those contractors, if someone want to call in, to come in and do a foundational
So we have,
estimation?
we don't have a registered list, as we don't oversee that, but we have a great idea who does do that work that we can provide. And it may not be fully updated as they're not
But you have, so
licensed.
they could call in
general
theory, and
idea.
get an idea of
Yep.
some folks. Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Okay. Anything else for Adam? Okay. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, library, Sarah Beth.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Things have definitely been extra busy at the library the last couple of weeks. A lot of, several families that are dealing with their own homes coming in to work, use the computers or the Wi-Fi, or just remain comfortable for a few hours. So we've seen an uptick in office services like printing, scanning, faxing copies. So we continue to not charge for anything flood related for those services. We've also seen quite a few more requests for notary publics. So we do have 3 notary publics on staff, but we're busy, so call ahead if you need that, and we'll get you scheduled to get that taken care of. But we also don't charge for that service either. One of the biggest things we have been providing in coordination with the Spencer schools, we're providing some afternoon childcare. So that continues this week, Thursday from 1 to 4, and then next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 1 to 4. And we're really appreciative of the school teachers and other staff that have volunteered to help us with that. Because I don't know about the rest of my staff, but there's a reason I did not go into education. So they've been fantastic just helping us corral the kids. 25 seems like 50 when we get them all in the round room. But so yeah, we just would like the parents to call to register them for those days. Beyond next week, we're not quite sure what it's going to look like. The schools are working on some fun activities that aren't quite set in stone yet for the week of the 22nd. But at least for tomorrow and then next week, we'll be doing those 3 afternoons. And then our number is 580-7290 to call and register for the child care. In addition to the child care, we're doing some extra outreach story times for displaced daycares. Monday morning, I went to First Baptist Church where there were 3 different in-home daycares using the facilities there. And this morning, I saw the Trinity Daycare Group, which is meeting at the First Congregational Church. So just some more great examples of the neighborly cooperation happening in our community. It's been fantastic. We've been contacted by a few organizations and individuals about doing book drives, not for the library itself, but for the kids in our community. So 2 of them are set up now. Farm Bureau is doing a book drive on July 23rd, and then on July 31st, a group sponsored thing, Kinder Music, Pearson Lakes Art Center, and the Dickinson County Libraries are hosting a storytime event at the Pearson Lakes Art Center at 6:30 on the 31st, where they also do a book drive. So those books will come to us at the library, and then sometime the first week or 2 in August, we will have a book giveaway. Which was part of our summer reading plans as well, but now we'll have even more. So that's for the Spencer youth to restock their personal libraries that they may have lost in the flood.
Okay. Any questions? Well, again, pointing out that the library is much more than just books and magazines.
You betcha,
right?
yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Fire Department, Chief Colson.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. In summary, just to give you a perspective, in the month of May, we responded to 66 calls for service. In the month of June, we responded to 181 calls of service. From June 1 to June 21, we had responded to only 48 calls. That last week, the 22nd to the 30th, we responded to 82 calls. That doesn't include the hundreds of extrication or rescues that were performed during that time. It was just not capable of documenting all of those. calls of service still remain high for us compared to what we've been, but that's just a reflection. We're 3 times of what we would normally be at this point. Staffing remains a concern. We do have 30 members on our roster, but 26 of those are able to respond to calls. Over 50% of those were impacted by the flood itself, and we did count on that, and over 50% of the ones that were affected by the floods are actually displaced and living in different places and delaying any potential response. One of them so far that I know of is out in Emmitsburg and is probably not going to respond to a call from their location. And good news, we have stable power at the fire station as of 5 o'clock last night. There's little bugs in the systems that we were working out, but we actually came off of the generator. The mobile generator that was at the station since the event, we came off that power, came on to stable power at the station. We can actually get doors open and run the mechanics of the station as we need to, which the critical point in that is not just for the station houses all of the communications stuff and the tower for Clay County, which has impacted all of our 911 response in Clay County. So this is a very good thing. Not only did we get stable power last night, we had our generator serviced and the automatic transfer switch was installed and in place. So even if the stable power becomes unstable, our generator should be working the way it should and be able to power the critical infrastructure that's housed at the fire station. So good news in light of everything.
Any questions for Chief? Okay, thank you very much. PD, Chief Warburton.
Good evening. So if you can remember, since the flood, the Iowa State Patrol has come in and supplemented manpower for us, especially in the overnight hours. As of Monday, that has ceased. We are back to normal working conditions and normal staffing levels. During this time, the police department during the flood, lost electrical power, both to the police department administration building as well as to our communication center. And so that power was supplied by Hy-Vee disaster response came in and had a generator for the administration building. And a new generator had to be purchased for the communication center. That has all been installed, and the communication center is back up and running as of Tuesday morning. So we are back and stabilized, and I have a happy group of dispatchers right now that are back into their building. So you're going to see some on Monday night estimates for drywall, flooring, and paint has been acquired, and looking to try to get that done just as soon as possible to get us back in functioning order, I guess. We're not pretty on the inside there at the police department, but we're making it work. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, thanks, Chief. Public Works, Mark.
Good evening. Since I've given a couple reports previously, I'm not going to go back too far, but in the last week, and prior to that, the wastewater treatment plant is back in full operation, like we talked about, as far as treatment and operation. However, still undergoing a large flood damage, as you can imagine, like everybody else is, with cut drywall and drying the building and going through equipment. It was an opportunity to bring a lot of the things out that have been stored over the years, and we've been down working with the operators on disposal of obsolete pumps and et cetera. Solid waste back to the normal routes, so recycling and trash pickup is on the normal times that you would normally have, as we continue to be very busy with container and roll-off operations. The street division is very busy running the street sweepers as well, because there was some concerns about debris on the street. In addition to that, the Iowa DOT has brought in a truck that has a magnet on that follows kind of the quadrants of where they're working, and that certainly was an issue, and hopefully we're making some progress on improving that. We also have to get back on track. We have a seal coat project coming on this summer, so starting Monday they're going to start doing some asphalt patches, because we have to have some of that, we have to have that completed before the contractor comes in. So the Probably one of the biggest changes right now is at the landfill gearing up for all the additional material that will be coming in from the ground product coming over. So we've had some additional staff brought on, rental equipment. Clay County has provided a dozer with an operator part of the time. So it's a real group effort as we move forward and organize. Now, if the landfill cannot manage the amount of material coming in, which we're pretty confident that we will, there is a process to fill out a form to go to a different landfill to release that material out of our planning area, and that process has already started as well and identified where it may go and contacted additional landfills. So, any questions?
I have one question.
Sure.
Are we going to be weighing the amount of material coming into the landfill?
Everything is weighed. Even when the DOT trucks were running for a while, which was a little chaotic with that many trucks when they first ran the first day through the landfill, we keep track of every truck number and every load that goes across the scale.
Thank you.
And to try to follow up to segregate that for flood damage material, obviously also to have a column to hopefully work with reimbursement on that.
Well, yeah, and that's where I'm leading, and it might not be a question for tonight, but I'm curious if we can document and demonstrate the potential need for a new cell if public assistance is going to potentially come into play on that.
I can say in confidence we have that covered.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks,
Mark,
Mark. Go ahead, Donovan.
Two questions.
Sure.
Is the tree and grass site opened up yet?
The original tree site is open back up, yes.
Okay. That was an easy question.
All right, I'm ready
The
for the
next
hard one.
question, if we fill this new cell up, and I know we already talked early on this that, hey, we already need to be talking about another new cell, but if we fill this one up and yep, we got all this personal property in that cell, can we, how fast do we need to pick up the pace on building a new cell, or will we still be able to maintain?
We'll be able to maintain. What most likely will happen this fall, we'll move into a contract with the engineer to develop and design the next cell and possibly let and construct next summer.
Okay.
I think our timing worked out really well for that. We opened a brand new cell right when that happened. That may not have been the case always, but it certainly worked to our favor this time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good. Thanks, Mark. Park and Recreation, Bob.
Good evening. We will, well, obviously right now the discussion has been around the Aquatic Center. It will be closed for the season. We'll go through, continue to check all the equipment, get things prepped up for fall so we're prepared for it next season. One of the things we'll be going and reaching out to people on is extending their pool pass for the next season off of this one. So that way it will be covered with that for them. The campground there's just a lot of damage in the campground. We do we're in contact with the electrician. We'll be looking at replacing pretty much all the electrical at the campground. Everything, all the boxes were all underwater. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of work and update to that. East Leach Park, we did have that evaluated yesterday by a structural engineer, which just kind of made me feel a little bit better that we had 7 feet of water going through East Leach Park through the Miracle Playground, and it was moving water. Everything looks like it's in good shape, so we will get a memo back from him on that, just approving that it all is in good position there. We have the skate park all up and ready to go. People have kind of moved back in there and started to use that again. It's all cleaned up nicely. And we have had ServPro come through Aquatic Center, the skate park. They came through the shelter rental facilities for us and our park shop and got all that cleaned back up for us. So everything's kind of moving forward with that right now. The biggest thing with like the Miracle Playground, I wouldn't encourage people to use it quite yet because we do have to get new playground mulch down there just for the fall hazard in that area there. Otherwise, we got the shop. We're slowly getting back to making it functional again. We do finally have one computer up and going in there. Next week, we should have everything else kind of up and running in there, and we are moving back into our shop now to be working out of that. A few other things that over the course of this, obviously the ball season for the youth baseball softball league ended as the flood came in. And then we do still have the park program going on through the YMCA right now. That'll extend through its regular scheduled time for the finish up for the season. And then with Bull and Mink, we do have our contract on hold with them at this time until decisions can be made on what direction we want to do, if we want to continue on with design services yet at this point in time, or if we want to continue to put those on hold at this point in time.
Okay. Any questions for Bob?
Yeah, Bob, so the aquatic center has been cleaned, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and there's no visible signs of damage, is that accurate?
At this point, correct, yes.
Okay. How many days roughly does it take to fill the aquatic center?
You have at least 2 days to fill.
Okay. And then what would be the next step?
We'd want a week for chemical balance.
Okay. Can chemical balance take place while the pool is open?
So yes, it does happen, but I would not feel comfortable coming off of a flood doing it that way, because it really pushes the limits. The last 2 years, we've done that, and it really pushes the limits, and that's not dealing coming off of flood water in there.
When you say push the limits, what do you mean?
You have to monitor it very heavily, and it's, there's just things that can go wrong from day to day if you don't have it quite in check. And so then you run back right into where you're closing it down for potentially multiple days to get it back into check. So perfect situation, or I shouldn't say the perfect situation, realistically, we need a week to have the chemicals in balance before we start putting people back in there.
Have you had any conversations with the Y related to the contract and their willingness and ability to staff the aquatic center?
Early on, yes, we did.
And were they still able to, and are they still able to?
At this point in time, no, they would not be able to.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, any other questions for Bob? Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
Okay, human resources. I think, Kevin, you have that report.
Thank you, Mayor. Jessica was unable to be here tonight, but gave me her report. So she continues to connect local recovery efforts with state and national aid through the Iowa Disaster Human Resource Council and their affiliations. This week, she's been busy with the AmeriCorps in the area, preparing to supplement our volunteer efforts in the mucking and mud out process for homes, and she will continue to help organize that effort in the community. The key piece moving forward through the work orders, as has been mentioned earlier today, that there's a lot of them, I think 500 or so is the number thrown out, that homeowners can still register with one of the approved entities, which can be found on our resource hub on our city website. Samaritan's Purse, 8 Days of Hope, Southern Baptist, or they can call the crisis cleanup number using the phone number as follows: 712-227-1136 or 1-800-447-1985. The reason it's important to go through these organizations is that's a central hub for us to track for FEMA purposes about the total volunteer hours spent in the community helping citizens get their properties back in order. She met with the Red Cross today and has requested a long-term recovery group liaison to be deployed here as we transition from immediate shelter housing into more long-term support. There's a mobile multi-agency resource packet that the team has put together. So essentially, the same information that they got at the Mark on the on-site event, we put together in packets, and I believe, Bob, the park staff delivered a bunch of those, the kids, I believe, around town. Mm-hmm. You did not? Okay, somebody did.
They did.
Yeah, they did.
The two girls. Yep.
Okay.
Good job, Bob.
Just making sure I got my facts right. So the reason we did that was not everybody has the ability to get out to the Mark when it was up for the 2 days. So we put that same information together in packets and walked around neighborhoods, handing that information to people. Let's see here. Upper Des Moines Opportunity is moving into a new location, hopefully, which will turn Foundation Church back into a church and give a more long-term solution to deliver services for supplies for those who need it. And the website Recovery Resource Hub is updated daily. While we do Facebook updates, we also vary the mediums that we deliver the information: radio, print, and so forth. I see Sharif is gone. I know at one point we had 11 different touch points where we delivered printed copies of information sheets for people, such as like the showers, gas stations, food locations, so people could get information. So, any questions? All right.
Okay. Item 3 is other business opportunities to address the council. Seeing none. Item 4 is items for future agendas, and with that said, we have 3 weeks between between the next council meeting next Monday and the first meeting in August, so I would presume that we're going to need a committee of the whole meeting at some point during that time. So if you have items that you would like to see on a committee of the whole agenda, forward them to me, or you can let Mary Beth know, or somebody at City Hall. So, anything else? I want to thank everybody here. I think the work and response that we have seen from the community, from all of the agencies, the department heads, is nothing less than extraordinary. And with that said, we still have a lot of work to do, but we have made extraordinary progress. And I think we're going to see that week in and week out, but it's going to be a long slog, but we're going to get there. We are going to recover, and we are going to rebuild. So, meeting adjourned.